Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to another week on the allotment. And as the sun comes up, it's Saturday morning, unusually. The forecast for tomorrow is diabolical, so I put in an application to the boss to swap days, and amazingly she said yes. I think now that we're in our 40th year of wedded bliss, she seems more and more enthusiastic for me to be up here and not in the house. So I've got all day Saturday on the plot, and it's that time when I'm trying to get stuff out of the greenhouse up here to make room for things like butternuts, more pumpkins. I'm having a problem germinating pumpkins at the moment. They just simply will not stick their heads out the soil, but the weather's dominating. It's just wet. Every day it rains. The forecast for the coming week is not too bad, but the week after it's back to rain and high winds. So yeah, we're struggling in this part of the world, although I can forgive most things when you're looking at that. So welcome along. First of all, I think I'll show you around, show you what I've brought up here, and we'll take it from there. Well, every year I make the same mistake. I sow things too early, I move them out the greenhouse too early, and I plant them too early. And I do it every year, and I know I do it, and every year I say to myself, right, next year I'm going to get this right, and I don't. But anyway, I still manage to crop things, so maybe sometimes you can cosset your plants too much. But a few examples of what I've brought up here now. They're not in cold frames, they're out. The night time, last night when I drove in, or this morning when I drove in, it was dark, and the temperature gauge on the van was 10 degrees. So it's not cold at night at the moment. The daytime temperatures aren't that warm, but the nighttime temperatures aren't cold. And I think that's one of the more critical points. So I've got my courgettes up here. I'm growing 3 different types this year, and just the reason I'm growing 3 different types is to provide to the farm shop. You know, the round ones, the yellow ones, they're a little bit novel. I thought people might buy them, but all the courgettes are up here now, for better or for worse. All my tomato plants are now up here and outside. It's only the first week of May, but it's more about looking at the weather forecast and anticipating any problems or otherwise. And then this one tray of squashes. This is winter squash mashed potato, and they're looking good. So far the slugs haven't found them, so I'm very pleased with that. So yeah, I recognise my own failings. I go way too early, but this year hopefully the weather won't nip me in the behind and the plants will get away with it. Time will tell. Well, I'm stood almost dead centre on the site here, and most of the plots are abandoned. I can't tell you who's paid their rent and who hasn't, but it's fairly obvious from just looking at them that most of the plots aren't used. This one is an exception, but most of them haven't been worked for months, if not years. If you look hard enough in any situation, you can usually find some positives. And this piece of waste ground right next to my plot is packed full of comfrey, and the comfrey is really taking off. So in another week or so I'm going to harvest this comfrey and make feed out of it. Possessions 9/10 and all that. So what's happening on the plot, I hear you say? Well, the fig's looking good. Mind you, I showed you it last week, didn't I? And it's still looking good. I think I can see growth in those small figs, but it may be my imagination and wishful thinking. And as we look up at the bottom of the plot, the purple magnolia peas are looking good, as is the rhubarb, and so is my comfrey. I've got plants all the way along there. They're not quite, for some reason, they're not as advanced as the ones on this ground next to me, but I'll take a second picking from them. That apple blossom does look stunning in the sunlight. But I'm stood here not because of the apple blossom, but to show you the potatoes. Kestrel and Charlotte are up in the tubs, and there's one tub of parsnips, and then all these ones with the EnviroMesh protection on are carrots. So they're a carrot root fly resistant flyaway variety, and they've all got EnviroMesh on them. Surely this year I'll get a clean crop of carrots. Let's hope. One of the planning requirements when they put in the golf driving range was that it was to be screened from the road with hedging. I don't know why, but it was. So they put the hedging plants in, and they've never cut them, so the hedge is turning into trees, except for that little bit there that I maintain, and it needs a good cut in the next couple of weeks, so that's a job for me to do. So let's look at the plot main. Well, the first thing to be said is the rose. Like I said, the rose is out on the arch, which is truly amazing. It came out in the last week of April, and the flowers are all starting to open. That's remarkable. That is very early. The broad beans have absolutely been smashed by the slugs. Never found a slug on them yet. Look at that. Absolutely ruined. I'm not even sure you can call that a broad bean plant. There are some pods forming, but very, very few. The peas seem to be doing okay. I don't want to tempt fate, but the peas do look good. These two bits of Harris fencing here, and then the third one there. I also this week sowed some more didn't sow them, sorry, I planted some multi-sown onions in this bed here. These stunning strawberry plants, which I've kept under glass for the last few weeks, have got some stunning flowers on, but it's not flowers I'm after, it's fruit. We shall see. Of course you don't get fruit without the flowers, but they look nice. I've taken the glass off now and they can manage, because of course I grow courgettes in this one. The garlic is bomb proof as ever, as are apparently those autumn sown onions. The blackcurrant plants could not look healthier. That's one positive. Some more of my tomato plants. I've even been reckless enough to plant them up in 2 hanging baskets. Tumbling Tom. They'll either survive or they won't. I do have spares in the greenhouse at home. And the asparagus is good news. I took a picking of that in the week. A really good picking, probably a dozen spears. Very nice. Beautiful, tasty, succulent. And I'm taking another picking today for tomorrow's Sunday dinner. So, good news. So far, these Romanesco cauliflowers seem to have been resisting the advances of my slug population. And I took the plunge and sowed a replacement crop of broad beans. This is a smaller bean called Oscar. The slugs have found them, but every time I come up here I pick out each pot of whatever the crop is, inspect the pot for slugs and put it back in the tray, and so far, although they have taken a hit, it hasn't been fatal. And in here I have some more brassicas and then some French beans, both climbing and dwarf. We'll see. I mean, whether the slugs do get in these cold frames, but hopefully some will survive. And this is my first sowing. I will sow again in the latter part of May. Well, my stunning display of tulips is just about at an end, but they were beautiful while they lasted. Nature's work of art. As part of our future plan that I outlined at the beginning of the year to move and to buy a piece of land, we have started the laborious process of clearing stuff. Like everybody, we accumulate stuff. Maybe not as much as a lot of people, because for 30 years we were in military married quarters and the attics were always padlocked. You couldn't get into them. There was a small shed in some of the gardens, but it only got a couple of bikes and a lawnmower in it. So we're not as bad as others. Some of the customers I go to, the clutter they accumulate is frightening. Anyway, we've started clearing the loft, and yesterday I took my van full to the tip of stuff that most of it are kids. That's not true, actually. But yeah, a lot of stuff that we've just, stick it in the loft. I don't know why we didn't do it years ago. Anyway, in the loft were a couple of boxes that used to belong to my mother and father-in-law. All sorts of, knickknacks and boxes of photograph negatives and things like that. Anyway, I was up in the loft and Cheryl was on the landing beneath me, and I'm passing stuff down, and I passed this box of junk down. I said, just stick it in a bin liner and I'll take it to the tip. She said, no, I'll go through it later and have a look. Anyway, that's what she's like. She is very fastidious, and thankfully she is. So during the week she got this box and took stuff out. She found a Coronation Bible. Didn't know there was such a thing. 1953. Don't know if it's worth anything, but it'll probably go to the car boot sale. Anyway, there was another Bible in there. Must have belonged to her parents, I guess. And she flicked through it, and inside the leaves of this Bible was £200 in old £10 notes. Each £100 was in a sleeve from the bank that said £100. Well, I mean, that's a mystery. It must have been her mother. And hiding £200. Wives can be like that, can't they? Cheryl has all sorts of little hidey holes all around the house where she keeps things from me, and I know where they all are, I think. Anyway, yeah, £200 in cash. And I said to her, I said, well, the date for exchanging those has long passed, but she went to the bank, and the bank said, we can't exchange them cash for cash, but if you go to your own bank, they can pay it into your account. So she drove off to the nearest HSBC, which is almost on another continent. Thanks, HSBC. And sure enough, they paid £200 into our bank account and took the old notes. So there's a good news story. Goes to show, always listen to your wife, fellas. They know best. I'd have put it in a bin liner and taken it to the tip. Anyway, a little humour, I think, is needed. Oh, yeah. Here's a good one for me. Allodaxophobia. Allodaxophobia is the fear of other people's opinions. I always say to my wife, if I want to know your opinion, I'll tell you it. The Eiffel Tower was originally built for Barcelona. There were active volcanoes on the moon when the dinosaurs were alive. The Pope cannot be an organ donor. It is impossible to hum while holding your nose. Go on, I'll give you a second. See, told you. Finland has more saunas than cars. Wearing a tie can reduce blood flow to your brain by up to 7.5%. I suppose it depends how tight it is, doesn't it? Blue whale tongues can weigh as much as an elephant. The unicorn is the national animal of Scotland. How is that even, you know, it doesn't exist. Mind you, I suppose you've got the Welsh dragon, and spoiler alert, that doesn't exist either. Smartphone users touch their phones 2,617 times a day on average. Churchill looks grumpy on the £5 note because the photographer who took the picture had just removed his cigar. Yellow tennis balls, which look better on colour TV, were the idea of David Attenborough when he was the controller of BBC Two. Elephants can hear better with 1 foot off the ground. I do remember when I was a young soldier on the commando course, we were out at night doing all sorts of different exercises, and we were told by the guys on the course, the instructors, that if you're listening for a very subtle sound, if you open your mouth behaves as a sort of an echo chamber and you can hear better. Well, of course you do look a prat, but it is in the dark, and it works. You can hear better if you open your mouth. Blowing out candles on a cake increases the bacteria on the cake by 1,400%. See, nowadays that would be seen as a bad thing, but back in the day when people cared about children's health, that kind of bacteria on a cake is a really good thing, because children need to encounter, anyway, enough. During the Second World War, fish and chip shop managers were exempt from military service. Wow. I suppose the British people needed their fish and chips. Morale. Yeah, quite interesting. Well, I've explained before that I've potted up my snowdrops to take with us when we move, but if you can see these little seed pods, this is how the snowdrop sets seed, and you can either just leave them in the ground and they'll drop to the ground and they'll seed and procreate and multiply, but if you want you can take them off and put them on the surface of another pot, and they'll break down and hopefully you'll get some new snowdrops, not to be wasted. How different the health of the plants is depending on the soil they're planted in, or the compost. These ones here, these are all the same variety except for the 4 on the end, but these are all crimson blush. Look how green and verdant they look in larger cells compared to these ones that are yellowing, because they're in tiny little cells. So I've made a decision that I've got them sat up here. They've been sat on this bench or table now for a week, and they're perfectly fine. They're hardened off, I would guess. Now, of course, we're not out of the frost range yet, But I've looked at the forecast for the next 2 weeks, and although there's a lot of rain in the forecast, the temperatures are quite moderate. So I'm going to bite the bullet and I'm going to plant them, and come what may. And I know it's too early. Some people won't be planting their tomatoes outdoors until June, and that's the sensible thing to do. But never let it be said that I was sensible or patient. Well, whether it's the right decision or not, they're in. That's 20 odd crimson blush. And over here, crimson crush. Oh well, just check the thermometer, which is in the shade, and it says 23 degrees centigrade. So a proper warm day, warm and sunny, lovely. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and of course because it's a Saturday, it's a completely different day for me. And there was a few people up here. I think there were 5 other plotters. I mean, they came after I arrived and they left before I'm leaving. So, but they were here. So yeah, that was nice to see. And I really feel like I've achieved a considerable amount on the plot. Obviously, got the tomatoes in, and Bridget came over to see what I was up to and said, "Oh, that's brave." I said, "Well, it's either brave or foolhardy." But we'll see. Yeah, I don't think I'll do that again. I'll leave it another month, I think, in future. I'm going to need to put the tomato sowing further back, March, April. Anyway, it's done now, for better or for worse. I'll keep an eye on the forecast. I'm not here next week. We have a week away. It's not really a holiday, although we'll class it as such. We're going to West Wales, up near Aberystwyth and along that coast, to go and contact a few estate agents. Hopefully have a look at a few properties that are on the market now, although we're not in a position to put in any potential bids. But we got it's really research to look at the area, see if it's a place that we'd be prepared to live, see how friendly the locals are. So yeah, I'm away for a week. I'll post again in a fortnight's time. So yeah, everything is as good as it can be right now. I've had a fantastic day. I'll probably get up here a couple of times in the week. So pretty much things are on their own for the next couple of weeks. I spoke to John today. He's going to do a little bit of watering for me. So yeah, as we stand in the first week of May, everything's going reasonably well. As I've mentioned before, I've lost a few crops with slugs and snails, but with the amount of wet weather we're having, that's hardly surprising. So I hope you're enjoying your garden or your allotment, and I shall see you in a fortnight and let you know how we got on looking at properties with a bit of land in the west of Wales. Until then, look after yourselves, take care, bye for now.